Ready? So you just tell me.
Recording is on.
So we just started recording. So good morning. Welcome back to everybody. Today we are starting with the Learning JavaScript module. I am super excited for this. I got a little bit of anxiety. First of all, before I introduce myself, I would like to uh, give you my congratulations because you all came to this point. It's very important. Many people subscribe to Stackademic, and that's very important. But we all knew that not everyone was going to go through all the curriculum, because you got to really put a lot of effort to start doing this job to become a web developer. So congratulations to you for keeping up to this point. So from Milan, I'm giving you my congratulations and my claps to you. And in case you still haven't never seen me, I did want to ask me anything with Sunil. My name is Piero Borrelli. I will be your teacher for this module, part of the content creation one, and for preparation to the interviews. So I have been a professional developer for the last 4 years. I'm currently based in Milan, but I come from the south of Italy, from Napoli, from that city. I came in Milan to pursue my dream of becoming a developer because Milan is kind of considered like the Silicon Valley of Italy, really. If you want to do tech in Germany, probably you go to Frankfurt or Berlin. In UK, you go to London, and here you go to Milan. So I moved here when I was just 18, and for the last 4 years, I'm 22. I've been doing this job professionally. So very excited to be here. Now, before diving straight into learning JavaScript, I would like to introduce you to some companion tools that I've prepared for you to make this process a lot smoother. But before we even go with that, we can start with some advice and how to get the most out of this module and learning JavaScript. Okay, so one quick note about my style of teaching is that I prefer to do many lessons and more condensed, so you don't lose the grip on what you're doing. So my plan will be to do lesson basically every day of the week except for Tuesday, because I have like a regular event that I have to attend on Tuesday. So at the end of the lesson, we will try to organize and see if that fits with your time. Otherwise, we can always change that. So that's kind of my idea for teaching to you. Let's see how you can get the most out of this module. So the first thing is, of course, follow all the lessons, because you don't want to lose the point on anything. And most lessons, let's say all the lessons, will build on top of something that you learned last time. So if you learn about conditions, you will first need to go through the previous lesson to learn about type coercion and types in general, variables. So that's very important. I even wrote something about possibly coding along with me. I really don't know how is your setup right now. So if that is possible, I suggest that maybe some of you have double screen, or you can quick switch between the editor and me. If that's possible, I suggest that you may want to do that. Of course, do all the assigned homework. I will give you like some homework to do at the end of every lesson. And to be honest, this lesson might sound to most of you like, okay, I already know these things, but you gotta understand that we can't start from thinking that everybody knows something about JavaScript. So we will start really from the foundations. And also, I will keep this lesson a little bit shorter than the other ones, because already from lesson number 2, we are going to dive deeper in the language, and we're going to learn a lot. If you get stuck, don't beat yourself up. The best part, I think, about Stackademic is that we have a community. So you have a Discord chat, you have Twitter. You can write to me on Discord in the private chat. You can write to Sunil. You can ask people for help. So this is something that I wish I had when I started learning to code. So really take full advantage of that. If you have a problem, seek out for help. Don't be ashamed, because there's no shame in learning and being curious and trying to repair errors, or if you don't understand something. This is another idea. Try to find a coding partner in our community. Kind of like when I was in high school and I was learning how to code, sometimes I will bring, for for lunch some friends of mine, and we will code together. So we are not close physically now, but you can still find a coding partner and maybe share your idea and say, do you want to build this together? Definitely do it. It's great because there are different opinions combining together, and you can learn a lot from each other. Build projects, solve challenges together. That's something great. This is very important, actually. Point number 5. This is probably the thing that I struggle with the most in my coding career. I would buy, I didn't have a tutor like you have now, or somebody telling me, you got to do this to learn how to code. I had my school, yes, but, I was spending there 5 or 6 hours a day, 6. And so the rest of the afternoon, I didn't have anybody to guide me. I wasn't very skilled, so I had a lot of problems in understanding where to go, what to learn. So really, I just bought a lot of tutorials, a lot of books without ever going anywhere. Because really the best approach which you can take in this career is simply to say, okay, I want to have a project-based approach. So you have an idea, you build it. Whether you just learn how to write an if statement, you build a fun program with that. And the same goes for loops, objects. Always have a project-based approach. You're learning, you're making errors, which are growing you in seniority. And also, you will have a nice portfolio at the end because you actually built something. And especially if you don't have any previous knowledge of coding or previous career to show, it's important that you demonstrate to possible hiring companies that you like to do something that you like to learn. That's what I did to get my first job in coding. And the 6th thing is, it's okay not to understand everything at first. We're all struggling, to be honest. Even if I can code already in JavaScript, I'm struggling because I'm in front of 25 people and I have to show my skills and be of help. So everybody's going through certain struggles. And I just invite you, I can't be in your head, but I really invite you to be kind with yourself. So don't beat yourself up. And if you can't understand something, just don't tell yourself, oh, you're not good or you're an imposter. Just say, okay, you need to know it. We're going to work harder toward it. So give yourself some positive attitude because that's really what you need. And as mentioned, to make this process of learning JavaScript easier for you, I have prepared some companion tools, which I hope you will enjoy during our path. So these tools are Notion, Discord, and VS Code. Discord, it's actually very easy to understand. We have our community, as mentioned, ask for help and see if when the lessons are starting, if somebody wants to, make a pair programming session, even just between students, or they want to invite a teacher, feel free to do that. That's super great. So Discord is our first medium to join each other. The second one is Notion, and we're going to get out of this for a second because actually I got fun in learning Notion. I prepared for you. I will share it again with you in the chat. I shared this on Discord in case you didn't catch it up. So basically, let me introduce this to you. This is your diary for this JavaScript path. So basically what you have is lesson name, lesson link, and other columns. In case you don't have Notion, just subscribe to it. It's free. And once you get to my link that I sent you, here you should see something like duplicate as template, and you should bring automatically this template inside of your working directory. So I prepared this for you because you have each lesson name, so you see what we are going through and what more you will have to learn. You can check, okay, I did this, maybe you skip the 4th lesson, or the 5th one, but you've done all the rest. So you just say, okay, I need to catch up, and you find us on YouTube. I will make sure that for the people who will see this on YouTube, you will get a link down below for this document. So here are all the lessons that we will do. There's also a secret lesson. What's that about? I'm not telling you. This is very useful because I have, then I added lesson link, so you can catch it up on YouTube. You just enter the link here, Google. The best part is that you can open this directly from Notion. Super cool. Notes on the lesson, in case like you want to take some notes, like if statements are cool or probably something more valuable than this kind of comment. Companion articles, similar to the lesson link, because I will give you some companion articles to read while learning, so you can keep them condensed, and not have to go through the Discord chat to check them out. And then you have the homeworks, and you can select between done, working on it, missing. So of course, do them if you want to get the most out of this. So let's go directly now to Visual Studio Code. Oh no, but first, I have created one more thing for you. So for every lesson, I have created some starter code, which for most lessons will be the same, because we are going to interact first with console, alerts, and loops. But in case you don't want to write your code first, I will share a link with you. So you just go here, lesson 1, you copy the index.html, the style.css locally, and you're ready to go. I'm going to copy it in, okay, so in the chat. Arutran is asking, do you need to create an account? Yes, you need to create an account on Notion. So probably it will ask you to create it once you get on the link that I sent you. You just create it. You click on on the link, and in the top right corner, there should be something like duplicate as template on your, it should be here. You can't see from here because I'm the creator of the student's diary. Okay, so we mentioned about JavaScript lesson. Feel free to just copy the code. It's something like super easy. It's just like learning with Stackademic. There's a CSS file. I've already done that. So we can also go to learn right now in our environment. So I think you notice I'm using a Mac. I love my Mac. I was talking about this with Sunil. It's really a great machine. So I'm gonna drag my project into Visual Studio Code. We can already start to open index.html. You see, it's just very empty page to start, to begin with. This is my Visual Studio Code. We're going to see now, because this is our third companion tool. By the way, this is you have recognized this because this is the color we use for Stackademic. So some of us, I think you already also had it in, like your Twitter. I think I opened the wrong folder. No, let me check. There you go. Okay, so we have our index.html, our style.css. Don't look at these two files. Probably you know already what they are, but I've decided to teach you about them in another lesson, which will come this Friday. But as mentioned, we will organize it later at the end of the lesson to see if it's a time that can fit for everybody. And so index.html, style.css. Before introducing JavaScript, one last thing about Visual Studio Code. I can give you some suggestion about some settings. So first of all, you will notice that my color is not the same as you, because I have a Night Owl as theme on Visual Studio Code. But in general, if I also use some other extensions to improve my workflow. If you're wondering about those extensions, I have them downloaded here. But to make this easier for you, I have created an extension package, which I will share on the link down below on YouTube and on the Discord channel. So in case you're interested, you can directly use all my extensions. So in kind of like a useful package. So I don't have to tell you, use this, use this. You just download my package. It will automatically update your Visual Studio Code, and it's super cool. It's just to create a package, really, I just took extension that already existed, gave a name to them, and you can use them. To give a quick overview, these are the same extensions that I use in my daily job, by the way. I have bracket pair colorizer to colorize like brackets. can you see that these two are both yellow? If I have many brackets, they all colorize, and really, I don't know why anybody should ever live without this. Auto rename tag, because I have link, maybe no, not this, but okay. Maybe I misspelled title, and if I update it, the closing tag updates automatically. I got yes link, highlight matching tag, and generally like trailing white space. And this is used because when you're committing code in your daily job as a developer, Git signals, that you made some changes if you had a white space. So I just want to see them. So you can see if I had some white spaces here, the VS Code tells me that. So, and other thing to note about Visual Studio Code, let me do this. I suggest that you use autosave on focus change for saving your files. Basically, this means that your file changes save whenever you switch the focus. So you see, I changed the window and they immediately saved. This is very useful because when you're developing an application, you switch between Chrome and this, and when you're switching to Chrome, usually you want to see the modifications that you did. So you want to save automatically and update the file. So let me go back. This is my font size. I use tab size because I prefer tab, especially because I work with React. And there's a lot of indentation with JSX. You will see that with Sunil, and also some lessons I will do in React. And one other thing to know is save format on save. It's also something I suggest you to check because it's very useful, because you will save your file. You will format your file and save, and we're going to see how to do that better in future lessons where I will show you how to improve your JavaScript workflow. So let's dive directly straight into JavaScript. Let me see if any of you got any problems in the chat. I hope chat, is everything okay? Okay, so thumbs up, perfectly. So I'll take a sip of water. And let's go. So what is JavaScript? Well, JavaScript is a high-level programming language used in different environments, and it's really the foundation of web development. You can't be a web developer without knowing JavaScript, so it's really important. JavaScript is the missing piece that we need to our HTML and CSS learnings. It's really mandatory to know it, and after learning JavaScript, you will learn React and prepare for the interview. But just remember that learning this language correctly, I believe, is the most important investment which you can do in your coding life now. Why is that? Because JavaScript is so in demand. All the modern frameworks for the web are based on JavaScript. So really learn well the foundations, because that's how you will be one step ahead in coding interviews. That's how you will learn frameworks faster. Really, when my bosses do interviews in the company I work for, even if you're working with React, most questions are related to JavaScript, like what's a closure? So because that's the important thing, because you can work with hooks, you can work with JSX, but really you're working with JavaScript concepts. So mandatory to know. And that's our goal now. And as with CSS, we have to plug a file to run JavaScript in the browser. Now, similarly to CSS, you use a specific tag, which is the script tag, and we gotta do some kind of discussion around this tag. So I'm gonna create first my JavaScript file. I'm gonna call it script.js. And one question that often arises is, where do I put the script tag? Because with link, you just put it in the head of your HTML document. Well, the reason related to where you have to put the script tag is related to how the browser works. You gotta understand that when the browser encounters this tag, Okay, so the browser gets the page, it started parsing the HTML, then it meets the script tag and says, oh, I gotta download the script and then run it. But in that time, it stops the parsing of the HTML. And that's really problematic if you have a very large page because you're reducing performances. One of the tricks that people use as developers in JavaScript is just say, okay, I'm gonna put the script at the end of the body tag. So I know I've already downloaded I've already parsed the HTML. But that's still a performance problem because you want to parse a very large page before running your JavaScript. That's still not ideal. Just imagine a page here that has 2,000 lines. It's not ideal. So what we would like to do is have a solution that start downloading the file on JavaScript without stopping the parsing, and then executes the JavaScript file when the download is done. You can do that in a modern way, which is just putting it in the head and using a keyword called async. There's also another keyword called defer. Basically, async will tell the browser, hey, start downloading the script. Once you're done, I will execute it, but don't stop the parsing. And defer is using similarly to async, but you can use it like this. Maybe you have a script and script one, and you just used to say, okay, execute this first and then this one second. When I learned to code, you gotta know that I was learning to code with a huge book called Programming Principles and Practices by Bjorn Strostrup, if that's how you pronounce it, the author of C++. And the first program that you always do is a very fun Hello World. So I'm going to give a tribute to it. And I'm going to write our first program using that, kind of in a cool fashion. Hello World. And you can see our alert. So alert is a function given to us by JavaScript. You will notice one thing about my JavaScript. I don't know if somebody of you already noticed that. I don't use semicolons. I actually talked with this with Sunil. The reason I don't use them is because in the project I'm currently working for in my job, we have a linter, which is kind of a tool to establish some consistency rules in your files in JavaScript, which prevents me from using semicolons. Because we decided to go like that, and we said, okay, for us, they are unnecessary. So I really got that into me and as a developer, and I don't use semicolons in JavaScript. So they're not mandatory, and we might open later a discussion about where or not to use them. Just know that if you don't see them, it's by my decision. So I'm not forgetting about them. So here we use alert and our first JavaScript program. Let's make it a little bit more interesting, progressing. So we can say like, hello world from console. And you can see that we have nothing. Not here, but we have it here. That's because we're using the console. The console, I guess you already have seen that with Sunil, because probably you ever seen elements when working with HTML. The console is part of what is called the developer tools. In my case, I'm using Chrome. And it's really a way to communicate between your program and the browser, because if you want to print something, if you want to print like an error log or some function parameters, it's really useful. It's one of the main tools I use for debugging. And usually in my daily job, I use elements, console, network for debugging or working with professional level applications. Sometimes I have used Lighthouse because it's used to do some audits on your code performances, but kind of on a CEO level, like if you have progressive web app, accessibility. So our program are already very boring. Let's make them even more interesting by introducing a concept which is vital to every program, which is what is a variable. So a variable basically is a container for a value that we want to use in our program, because if our program don't hold a state or don't have memory, they're pretty limited and pretty boring. So we can define our first variable in JavaScript. We can say let's just call it first name. First name is Piero. Okay, so this is how you define a variable. We are going to see some modifications, some like little cases about them. So you have this keyword. We will see what that means in a few moments. We have the name of the variables, and then we have the value of the variables. So to invoke a variable, you just refer to the name. My name is, and then you say, yeah. And we go back to console, and you can see my name. So basically, you refer to a variable by its name, and you give it to it. You can give it to it a value. And variables have some rules related to their names. I'm going to show them to you now. These rules are: the first character must be a letter or an underscore. You can use a number. So to be honest, if I try to do const 99 first name, you will see that Visual Studio Code is not very happy about that. The rest of the variable can include any letter, number, or underscore, but you can use any other characters. So you can't say first name with a space, or you can use a dollar. You can use like a double slash. And there is no limit to variable length, and they are case sensitive, which means that variables that differ in casing are different. So const first name is different. We're going to say Sunil. We're going to pay a tribute to Sunil. Okay, and let me go here. You can see that it prints Sunil. Why? Because we changed the casing, and these two variables are different. So we saw the rules about how to define variables. Now, let me make this program even more dynamic by using a special function called prompt, provided to us by JavaScript. You're going to say, what is your name? First name, and I'm going to show you what is your first name. My name is Piero, and it prints that. So you see how we assigned, so we put dynamically a value inside our variable. And in fact, actually, variables can change. Let me try to change my name. Suppose that actually my name is not Piero. Let me call Piero, so like how some people call me. Let me run this program. And you can see that we got an error, which is signal on the console. And it says, you can't do an assignment on a constant variable. Because here is the thing. There's not only one way to define a variable in JavaScript. There's actually three. I'm going to show you just two of them for now, because the third one, which is var, is not used anymore. It's not good practice. Don't use that, but it's useful for learning purposes when we will learn about scope. The second way in which I can define a variable is using the keyword let. So I can say like surname, and this is my surname. And now I can say, okay, let's do like this. Let surname, what is your surname? And I want to modify that with this operator, which is called assignment. So I don't know, let's add a random name like Rossi, which is very common in Italy. Borelli. You can see, oh, it's not defined. Sorry, didn't see that. You can see it says Rossi because we modified the value of the variable before printing it. That's because variables are variable, of course, in their value. And the difference between const and let is that with const, you can't basically reassign a value to it. Const actually stands for constant. And it's very useful because when you have a very large scope in your program, you have a very large file, you want to give meaning to your variables, not only by the values that they hold, but also by using the proper keyword. So maybe, I'm working on something that is very important, and a coder who will come 1 month after me writing the first line of code will try to modify the variable. But I will say, hey, I wrote it with const. That means you can't modify it. So generally, my advice for you is always use const unless you're sure that you will have to modify your variable, because this is very semantic and it's very useful. Of course, if you have to modify the variable, you can just use let. You might also have noticed something, that I can do this and I can do this. If you can spot the difference is not only in the variable names, but also in what kind of value I assign to them. One is a string and one is a number. So what are these two entities? They are types. And in JavaScript, we have types, both custom that we can define, and we will do that in the future, in future lessons, and also primitive types. Let's take a dive in what a primitive type is. Primitive types in JavaScript are strings, numbers, big int, boolean, undefined, null, and symbol. So this is a string, which is just a series of characters enclosed in double quotes or single quotes. I prefer single quotes. I use double quotes only when I have to do something like adding an apostrophe, because if you try to do that with single string, it will give you a problem. Single quote, sorry.
Hey, Piero, if you can hear me, can you just zoom in a little bit to VS Code?
Sure. Where is the zoom, actually?
I think it's Command and the plus symbol in VS Code.
Okay. Is it better for you now?
Do it a couple more times. Yeah, that's way better. Thank you.
Oh, no. Actually, I think this is huge for me to see on my screen. But never mind. So a number is a number, as you can imagine. JavaScript doesn't make any differentiation between floating point numbers like 22.5 and 22. So you just can use them like this because JavaScript has dynamic typing. So that means that you can assign to a variable values of different types. So you see, I assign first name, a string, and then now I can say first name equal 22. That's allowed in JavaScript. If you were coding in C++, you would probably do something like int first name, and then you would have the number here. And as soon as you try to assign a string to it, the compiler will break your code. That always also happens with TypeScript. And that might be our secret lesson, I don't know. So let's see other types that we can define in const number. Okay, const. I just put test. No, age is better. We can use booleans, which are for true or false logic. So if a condition is either true or false, so is Italian, we can say either true or false, kind of a binary logic, like how machines work. And we have undefined, const location, and we can say undefined, which basically represents an empty value in a variable. This is actually the value that you get when you don't assign anything to a variable. And then you also have null. Let's say address equal null. And then you have other types are big int and symbol. I'm not going to show them to you. Personally, in my career, I never used them. Big int is for very big numbers, and symbol is for values that don't have to change. It's kind of different from const. So it's not mandatory to know them. Personally, I've never used them, as mentioned. And just remember one very important thing. Variables in JavaScript don't have a type. Values have a type. And the values that you see here can be considered like an expression. And an expression is just something that produces a value. If you want to see how these values actually have their type, we can use an operator called typeof. So we can say console.log, and we just go typeof here. And you can see location has already been defined. Why? Okay. String, you see? brings string. So you can also do console.log type of 1, and you go with number. So that's another example. Expressions don't have to be necessarily that static. So you just assign a value of a certain type to a variable, like we did with first name. You can also use different type of operators. You can use math operators. For example, you can say that average is equal to, let's say we got some data and we want to say 1 plus 2 plus 3. And we just wrap that, kind of like you do with expressions. You can see how my extension colorizes that, the one I use. It also highlights the containing block, and that's so useful. It removes them now because I got a linter, but never mind. And I can do, like this. Average is average is 2 for this kind of data, which are, of course, mocked for the purpose of teaching to you right now. So you can use different types of operators, and this is actually an expression. Why? Because it produces a value. So you can use the plus symbol, you can use division, you can use the minus symbol. So, of course, like this. And you can also use other types of operator. So, for example, comparison operators. So is 1, this means bigger than 2. And let's see what that evaluates to. It's false. We're going to talk about why that evaluates to false further in the course. Just know also that operators, kind of like when you do expressions in math, have their own precedence. So for example, if you do an addition and a subtraction, these are evaluated from left to right. So let's say, you see, you have 1 plus 2 minus 3. But if you have division, 1 plus 10 divided by 2, it's 6, because it's 1 plus 10 divided by 2, which is actually being evaluated first, because JavaScript, when working with its operators, have something called operator precedence. You can search for that, operator precedence. I want to show that I searched also these things because I want to invite you to do the same. When I was starting to learn to code, I thought there was kind of some shame in not remembering something, but that's not the case. You never have to be ashamed of searching something if you don't remember that. That happens to me every day, to be honest. So here on MDN, which is an incredible web documentation for JavaScript, it's actually the official one, you can check a table with operator precedence. So here you have it. We have our operators. So we have grouping, and let's go down to see, you see, multiplication, division, and remainder come before addition and subtraction. In case you're wondering, the remainder actually gives you, it's called the modulo operator. So for example, if this is something very useful in a program that every coder does, which, for example, you go 10 module 2, and this is, let's see, it's 0. Why? Because that number is even, so it can be multiplied exactly for a certain number, which is, in our case, is 5, and give us 10. So this is actually what the module operator is doing. So this might sound very basic to you, but these concepts are super, super, super important. So one thing to note more, another concept that I wanted to introduce you in JavaScript are comments. Comments are very important. There are many articles related to writing comments. And really, they are just your voice, and like an added voice that you put in your code. And they have to express why you decided to do a particular thing. Never write comments like first name, and you say Piero, and actually, this is how you write a comment. You either write it like inline, this is a comment, or you write it with another syntax, which is multi-line. This is a multi-line comment. This is a multi-line comment part 2. This shouldn't happen, this kind of situation, because the variable name should be expressive, should tell you exactly what the variable is doing. So if I catch first name in my code, I know exactly why that is happening. A comment should express why you decided to do a particular thing. And right now, our program is not complex enough to show you a case where that happens. But for example, a couple of weeks ago in my job, I was working on, a MAC address from a compute from a machine, and I was writing a validation tool for a MAC address, and I had to do a particular choice to trim away white spaces around this MAC address. And if some of my colleagues would have encountered that without knowing why I was doing that, they might have said, like, why are you doing that? I was doing that because we have then submission to a server with a form, and I needed to trim the data away, the white spaces away. So I just wrote that. So I had something like my instruction here, and I just wrote a comment like something like prevent server error by trimming data, trimming white spaces. So that kind of thing have to be put in consideration when writing a comment. We will write better comments when situations like that allow us to do that arise. One thing that I forgot to mention to you about variables is that sometimes in JavaScript you might be tempted to use particular names which are forbidden, and you can't use them because they're reserved keywords. Because when JavaScript, when the engine is parsing, basically not the engine, but when on the lexing phase, so when basically the machine reads your code, it has to have some reference points to understand what is JavaScript and what kind of thing you define, like variable names. So you can't use any single identifier that you want in the language. You can't define a name like const, because this is a reserved keyword. And actually, Visual Studio Code tells that this is not an allowed declaration name. So that is very good. Another thing that you might not know is that name is actually not allowed in JavaScript. I saw an article related to this. I don't remember why. It's in some environments it might break, in others don't. Let me see if I console.log name is name. Oh, there it is. Name is deprecated. You see, put like this kind of little straight line. So you can't do that too with JavaScript. And so we mentioned this, we mentioned about names. And one thing to note is that some of your names will be composed by many words. So like, as you mentioned, we had our first name variable, first name. And you might have seen that I didn't define it with a lowercase m. That's because it's good practice to separate words to make names more readable, especially because since you're working with IDE or text editors like Visual Studio, you can easily just start entering a name and you can click enter and you get the full name. But you gotta be very careful not to misspell anything. And you gotta be very careful to distinguish between variables and between their words. So you use kind of like a naming convention. In my case, I'm using a camel case. So you can see I use first name. Some people prefer to use first name. Feel free to do that how you prefer. To be honest, I don't see underscore being used that much nowadays. People kind of prefer, how do you say that, camel case. So to define variables like this. So I'm gonna go back to the chat 1 second. And I just want to ask you if everything sounds clear for you right now, and just if anything is not clear. And because, I prepared a certain line of concept that I want to introduce to you in every single lesson. So if you want, I can show you something more. We can go more for like other 10 or 15 minutes, and I can show you something more about types, or have them in the next lesson. Let me check the chat. Clear? Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna, okay, let me check the Notion document. So you see, kind of like I'm a student now. I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna check this. And let me introduce you one more important concept about types. And these concepts are type conversion and type coercion. So what are these two concepts? Okay, so they literally mean the same thing, converting one type from another. So you get a string and you convert it to number. The string 22 becomes the number 22. The difference between these two types of conversion of these two words, let's say, is how they happen, because conversion usually happens explicitly, while coercion does not. Let me give you an example. I got my string 22 const to number, and I want to say, okay, I got this string 22. Oh God, I want that to be a number. I want to convert it. I can use this function and console.log. My number is to number. And let me check that. You see, it prints the number 22. It might be different. It might sound weird to check them because string is, I want to show you something to you. String is, I'm going to just add it here. I could combine them, but maybe it's more obvious. You can see that a string is not blue. So that's how you recognize in the Chrome developer tools. Keep that in mind. So to prove you that this is actually a number, even if we started from a string, we could do the same. Const string. You can see I'm using const. I don't have any intention to modify these variables. And guess the word, string. 22. And we can say string is 22. No, sorry. String. Again, one number, one string. This is how you use it for type conversion. Keep in mind, I never use type conversion like this because there was no reason for me to convert a number to a string or string to a number like that. And then we have type coercion. Type coercion, as mentioned, happens implicitly. So what do I mean by that? Well, I want to kind of get you a little trick. What do you think is going to happen if I do this? The chat answers, what is going to be the result of my sum? Okay, so always answered. Isaiah said error, and Alessandra answered correctly also, because it won't print. I mean, it might an error, but actually you will see a string, 221. How did that happen? Well, because type coercion is working for us, because JavaScript has this inner mechanism that says when you're adding a string to a number, just convert this number to a string. This is actually the same thing that happens if I go my sum and I just print 10. This 10 is being coerced to a string, and so you can just see my sum 10. So actually, I think that, hold on, I gotta do like this. Yes, my sum 10. We print a number like this because you can also use console log both by coercing like the 10 and using plus, or by using two parameters. You will understand what a parameter is further along the line. So that happens with 22 plus 1. Super cool type conversion, coercion. What happens if I do this? I guess you can get to that. I want to see if in the chat somebody can get that in the chat. What happens if I subtract 1 from 22 in JavaScript? What do you think is going to be printed in the console? nice. Nobody's answering me. I'll show you. '21. So coercion didn't happen with subtract operator, with the minus operator. And that's, there's really not an explanation behind it. It's just that JavaScript worked like that. So with addition is the only one which performs this kind of, operation. So we have my sum, and if you subtract, the string is converted to number. So it becomes 21, the final result. The same goes, for example, with subtraction, 11, multiplication. So that's type coercion at its best. And so sometimes it might produce some weird values for you, but that's, how it works. And so we got a little bit deeper into types. One last thing that I want to show you, but even if this is related, probably, I don't know, this is related to statements, so I will kind of show it to you next lesson. I just want to check how everything is going for you, if everything is clear. So Sunil asked me we can take a moment to talk about the console log. So we already did 1 hour of lesson. So as mentioned, I prefer to keep them shorter with a certain level of concept. My plan for you for the next lesson will be to show you if, loops, and which, and then, on lesson number 3, function, objects, and arrays. So for lesson number 2, we have a lot of things to talk about. For me, I can even show them to you now, but you tell me if what you got now is very a lot and you just want to make some exercises related to type coercion and just using the console. So let me check on the chat. Okay, so yeah, I think we should go with a post-lesson Q&A. So we will do that for next lesson because that will be a lot and you will be able to exercise more. So I invite you now to ask me any questions that you might have and any doubts or any feedbacks. I will just wait in the chat. Isaiah is talking to me about the console. Do you want to know more about the console? If that is correct. You can even unmute yourself for a second or raise your hand in the chat. You tried. Okay, somebody raising their hand. Yes, Sunil, unmute yourself.
Hey, don't worry. I didn't want to speak really. I was just testing to see if the thing worked because I thought Asaya said it wasn't working.
I can't hear you, Asaya, to be honest. Please mute yourself, Sunil, for a second. Let's see if I can hear her. Hafitz would like to speak. How do I highlight? Oh, Asaya would like to speak. How do I highlight you? Let me search for you.
Also, Piero, you shouldn't need to highlight anyone. They can just unmute themselves and start talking.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I was just waiting if Asaya wanted to speak first. That's why I was just waiting because I think she raised her hand first. That's why I was just waiting. Okay, so it's her system. Yeah. Okay. I know my questions might be a bit weird because I don't know anything about it. So that's why I'm asking these questions. I was just noticing that you put my sum in camel case, and then when you assigned it in the console.log, it was a separate my separate and sum was separate. So yeah.
It was separate.
Hey, Pierre, I think I know what Hafiz is referring to here. So, you know, on your online 3, where it says my sum in a string?
Yes.
I think Hafiz is saying he doesn't understand why there is this string there and it's not my sum written in camel case like you've got it on line 2.
Exactly.
Oh, well,
Nice.
Okay, thank you for the question, Hafiz. So console.log. Okay, so as mentioned, console is a way to communicate from JavaScript with the console in the browser, which is just, a way to debug and print things in a cool way like we did. So console, we haven't gone deep into functions now. So it would be useless for me to tell you it's a function and things like that and explain it deeply. But let's say that console is the log. Log is a function, and this function basically takes in one or more parameter. In this case, there are 2. The first one is a random string that you want to print. So, in my case, we wrote my sum, but we could also say my name or I love Stackademic. And this log will just make sure that we see that. The second thing is an expression. So in this case, a variable name, because this variable name will return a value. So it's an expression that we want to print. And we are using this because we want to print something dynamically. If I remove this, you will also just see I love Stackademic. But what if I want to print something that I stored? Then second parameter, let's say, thing that I'm passing in, you will understand better what a parameter is. And then I just say my sum. Really, you could really put everything here as long as that is an expression. You could put 10, you can put 25, or you can even put an operation actually. 22 plus 2. You can see it prints 11 because when printing, this produces a value because it's an expression. And the value of this expression is the result of the division of 22 divided by 2. So I hope that kind of cleared the sense of the console for you. Okay, so yes, I understand the use. Okay, so Grace asked me, how do I let Visual Studio Code and Chrome interact? Well, basically, Visual Studio Code really is a text editor. So you can create files, and you could actually create also like a simple text file like poem.txt. That's allowed. Let me delete that because I'm not good at writing poems. And to join the two things, of course, since I created a project, I have a folder on my machine where that project is stored, and that is called lessons. So you have lesson 1, and can you see that I have all my files that I define in Visual Studio Code? Because with Visual Studio Code, I open this folder, created files, and they are here. I just click on index.html, and it opens my file. Whenever I want to switch and see the modifications that I do in the code, I just come here, write some code, like interacting. And you can see I refresh the page by hitting Command R, or more visually, this, refresh the page, because it has to take in the modifications done to the code. And I understand, sorry, if you didn't realize how I'm switching between the pages. I'm using a shortcut. I'm using on my Mac Command Tab, which, if I hold Command, I can switch between all my open windows, or using the arrows. So basically, I'm doing this, Command Tab, Visual Studio, modifying, saving, Command, refresh, and here it goes. On Windows is Control Tab, yeah. And so, yeah, can you please enlarge your screen? I just see a grid. So, Christy, can you see the Visual Studio Code when I open that? Let me see the answer. Great to know the basics too. Okay, thank you, Grace. I see a grid of attendees. So can anybody else see my screen, right? When I switch from VS Code to the Chrome tab, we see that, yes. So Christy, I suggest that you check your configuration. Maybe you clicked on the name of somebody, or maybe you click on my icon so you can't see me sharing the screen. Yes, click on the title. Oh, I see it now. So perfect, Christy. Thank you. So do we have any other questions? Okay, so clicking on my icon worked. Let me see if I have any questions. Are we going to the DOM topic today? We are going into the DOM topic, not this week, next week. I will show you how to build 2 cool projects, and they are a color flipper and how to open a model. To do that, we have to go through some conditions first, because we have to build some logic around that. So we're not going to go directly into the DOM, but we're going there. Also, one thing to notice is that, so Ibrahim, don't miss the DOM lesson. One thing to notice is that we are using JavaScript in the browser, but JavaScript doesn't have to be used necessarily there. We can use JavaScript on a different environment, and that's Node.js. And so, JavaScript, the DOM is not part of JavaScript. JavaScript is just a language. The DOM is provided to JavaScript by something called the Web API. So the browser is giving the Web API to JavaScript. So we will see that further along the line. But for now, that was just to say that we saw the pure language and how to use that. So hope that was a satisfactory answer for you. Any other questions? Hafiz, you're welcome to speak.
just a stupid question again. How do you know each other, you and Sunil? Or
how do I know Sunil? That's okay. So in case you don't know it, I write on Medium. I have my Medium profile, and 90% of my articles are on JavaScript in plain English. So, which is the publication, one of the publications of Sunil. So we kind of got this rapport between editor and writer. And then when he announced Stackademic, I wrote to him. I said, hey, I want to contribute. And then we became more and more friends. And actually, we're not even that far right now from where he's located, because I'm in Milan, he's in Genova, like 2 hours of train. We're not friends, it's a lie. Well, Sunil is saying that because, I'm going to tell you why he's saying that, because, and this is because one of our lessons, and really I invite you to be there because it's going to be so great, will be competition time. And we tried competition time, me and Sunil, and he lost. So he doesn't want to be my friend anymore because he's offended. So I invite you to be there for competition time. Just to give you a quick update on what we will do on that lesson, it will be, for me, the funniest one, and we will compete against each other in a fun, relaxing way, and we will see each other's code. It will be like building little programs with a timer. It will be so, so cool. So be sure to be there, and there will be, I guess, it's lesson number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let me know if there are. Sunil denying Piero. Classic. He's denying, but you will see our fight back. So, Sunil, do you want to say anything about that?
I'm just laughing along at the chat at the moment. Ibrahim, it's not 1-0 Piero. It's actually 2-0 to Piero. I think he beat me twice when we played the coding game.
I didn't want to say that. I didn't want to be thrown out of Stackademic.
No, I've got nothing else to add. But I just wanted to take a moment to thank Piero for this first lesson, first of many, and I hope everybody found it useful.
Thanks to you. And so, actually, Ibrahim said, Piero versus Sunil in the JavaScript arena. Okay, so Arutran, please tell me if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. I really care about doing that. Okay, so my plan, as mentioned to you, is to have more condensed lesson. So I can't tomorrow because, as mentioned, I got to attend an event, not live. I just have to do like some checkings, and my plan would be to do the lesson at the same time, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Does that sound okay to you? Will you be able to join in? Because on Wednesday we will talk about, I always lose that, if, loops, switch. Thursday will be for function, object, and arrays. And on Friday, you will have a Q&A on my career. I want to talk to you about some important things, and I will show you how to put some power-ups to your JavaScript environment. Let me see. Okay, awesome. Thanks, Piero. So Christy, class will be on Monday, yes, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at the same time. So yeah, we will have 4 days of lesson this week. Hope you will be all able to join. And thank you for the compliments for my lesson. Of course, if you can't be there, just check the videos because the quality will be the same and you will be able to check them. 2 lessons, of course, I encourage you to be there, all the lessons live, because you can ask questions and things like that. And really don't lose the lesson on the Q&A and on competition time. Don't lose the opportunity to beat me and Sunil. That might give you some satisfaction. So, and of course, if you can't ask any questions because you are seeing the recorded lesson, write to me on Discord or Sunil. So hope that was satisfactory for you. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And here we go. I'm gonna, one last thing. You should see, I will do that now. In the classroom, let me give you 2 things. So the first one is desktop personal lessons, JavaScript. Okay. I just sent you a file on okay, I'm writing to that. In case you're interested, I just sent you a file on Classroom in Discord, so you can download my extension if you like them. Otherwise, customize your Visual Studio Code, send us the picture. That's so cool. We will see each other Wednesday, same time, for a new lesson. And as an assignment, I will then write this also for people on YouTube. I would like you to experiment a little with variables. Try to modify a const variable, see what kind of error you get. And because type error is also a very specific type of error. So search for that, experiment a little, do some math with different types and see what happens. And write a little quiz using the prompt function that we saw. For example, what's your name, what's your age? Have fun with that and the console log. This might sound stupid, but it's not, because once you write the code, you realize the concept that you didn't know precisely, or you realize that maybe you skipped a quote and that's causing an error or a problem. So that's what learning in this job is really made of. Dedication, writing code, and building projects. Programming is not a spectator sport, Ibrahim. Source of truth and wisdom. Thank you so much. So thank you. I will write to you the assignment and you can start exiting the chat from now. Thank you so much.
I will stop the recording now as well, Piero.
Done with the recording.